Everyone loves Unreal Engine 5. Developers love it because it's easier to learn than their own studio engines. Publishers love it because it helps them market their games and allows them to outsource development. Everyone loves Unreal Engine except for us. Although it can make things faster, easier, and in some ways more photorealistic, we, the consumers, have to make a lot of compromises. And the question is, are they worth it? Shouldn't we care what kind of engine a game is based on if it is often unplayable or requires powerful hardware that costs so much money that so long ago you could buy cooler things for that type of money? And the main question is whether this obsession of Unreal Engine 5 developers is destroying the gaming industry. Given that there are few competitors on the market that can deliver this level of graphical detail and technical capabilities while remaining very affordable, it's clear to see why Unreal Engine is so popular. Recently, we've seen several major studios announce that they are switching to Unreal Engine 5 for their upcoming games. For the future The Witcher 4, CD Projekt Red decided to abandon its own Red engine in favor of Unreal. For me personally, this is a rather strange decision, as the Red engine is visually superior to the Unreal Engine in some places, as we could see in Cyberpunk. Even the developers of the new Mafia have abandoned the company's internal engine and are creating the fourth installment on Unreal Engine. Ditto Microsoft, who rebranded 343 industries as Halo Studios, which will now use UE5 for future Halo games, while the studio abandons its own engine that they have been creating for years specifically for Halo Infinite. At the same time, BioWare is switching from Frostbite to Unreal, which is probably the best as Frostbite is not very suitable for third-person role-playing games. But BioWare has much more serious problems in game development. Who knows if they will even make it to the release of Mass Effect 5. Crystal Dynamics has abandoned its own engine, and the next Tomb Raider game will also be developed on Unreal. GSC Game World also abandoned their own engine to switch to UE5 for Stalker 2, and as we could see, it was definitely a rather controversial decision. This is exactly the case when Unreal Engine really messed up the game and brought quite significant problems to Ukrainian developers during the release of a long-awaited game. And although poor optimization and bugs are, let's just say, an ingrained part of the Stalker series, Unreal is simply not suitable for this game. After all, their artificial intelligence and NPCs use the specific technology of their personal engine, which allowed them to create unique behavior patterns that were the hallmark of the series. That's why the well-known revolutionary A-Life simulation technology worked so well in the first part and so poorly in the second. In general, many studios are now developing games on the Unreal Engine. This trend is not a bad thing in itself, but there are some serious problems that worry me and this dog. First, Epic Games has effectively monopolized the game engine market. Monopolized? Yeah, I said that right. Every studio that switches to Unreal brings Epic a percentage of their game sales, and Epic gets control over what games can be developed on their engine. The new standards for the Unreal Engine advise developers to avoid offensive words. Now, the code should not contain words like blacklist, whitelist, slave, and master, because, you see, it can upset someone, but that's not all. Gendered words are also taboo. Hey guys, and poor man's ex are banned. Even poor people, I can't fucking do it. Even poor people can't exist anymore. Epic officially recommends addressing everyone as they. Besides, nowadays, artificial intelligence in your games should be as inclusive as possible. Don't get me wrong, nobody is against correct language. But when a company that receives a percentage of the sales of each Unreal Engine game starts dictating how you write code, it looks like total control. Imagine a situation where you and your team have been developing a game on Unreal Engine for several years, and one of you writes a word in the code, well, for example, slave, and your game is closed. And no one knows how far Epic is willing to go with this censorship policy. If developers do something that doesn't comply with the rules, Epic can simply take away their engine license. But this is only the first big problem. The second is the unification of game development. What the fuck is that? Unreal Engine allows you to create a wide range of games with completely different styles. For example, Sea of Thieves, which has a very cartoonish style, but looks incredibly beautiful. But then there are games like Atomic Heart or Immortals of Avium that look like banal builds from ready-made assemblies and try to be photorealistic, which they don't really succeed at. I don't think I'm the only one that noticed that many Unreal Engine games have a typical Unreal Engine look, if you know what I mean. Games that look like demos. They use the same visual style. They try to achieve photorealism in the laziest way possible because Unreal Engine gives a good picture by default, and developers often do make an effort to add something unique to their game. They don't try to create some kind of compositional style or just make their game stand out from hundreds of other similar games. They just want to make everything look as realistic as possible, spending too much time on polygons instead of working on the visual style. And here we face some paradoxes, because the fact that almost all the new games on this engine look the same is the fault of the developers themselves, not the limitations of the engine. Unreal Engine does not impose restrictions on artistic expression. There are many unique games with unique styles created on this engine. As I mentioned, this is Sea of Thieves, but there are also Octopath Traveler, Borderlands, Little Nightmares, and Yoshi's Crafted World. So what's the problem then? Well, it's just my opinion, but I think that many developers just don't have the motivation or passion to create something unique. They just take the standard Unreal Engine tools and work on the visual style minimally. Besides, if you work in a big studio, your part of the work is quite limited. You are responsible for creating the vegetation in the game, and you, for example, wanted to make this vegetation not photorealistic, but somehow in your own way. Maybe some kind of painted, but some other guy in charge of character design didn't want to bother with it like you did and just made the NPCs photorealistic. Altogether, it will look very strange. Therefore, studios, in order to avoid such diversity in game design, simply make everything ready-made and photorealistic. Because of this obsession with graphics and realism, we only get a superficial visual style. Most AAA developers just throw in a bunch of shaders, lighting technologies, or post-processing, even though they don't even know how it all works. They don't know how to optimize these elements, which leads to the fact that most Unreal Engine games look great in trailers or screenshots to sell you on it, but then these games perform terribly after release. That's why I'm convinced that for most studios, switching to Unreal Engine won't solve anything. The engine itself does not make a game good. It still requires a huge effort from talented people who know how to create an attractive art style, unique animations, and work on optimization and the overall design of the game. I am concerned that both publishers and developers believe that Unreal Engine will solve everything. No guys, it won't. We're just ordinary people working hard at our shitty jobs to afford good hardware and your games at inflated prices. So please, try a little harder. I'm not against studios switching to Unreal, but I want to make it a real difference. It can be a great advantage if developers really put in the effort to create something special and not just use the superficial features of the engine. No doubt, the Unreal Engine makes it easier to onboard new developers, outsource, and use thousands of assemblies from the store to speed up development. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as studios don't completely depend on these factors. But something tells me that the transition to Unreal is happening precisely because studios want to put less effort into development. Now, let's get back to the topic of graphics. Honestly, I can't think of a single thing in video games that I don't care about as much as photorealism. Of course, there are exceptions, when photorealistic graphics were not just an extra nice bonus to an already good game, but also had a leading role in the gaming experience. For example, Battlefield 1 greatly benefited from photorealistic visuals, as it enhanced the immersion of the game. Anyone who has played Battlefield 1 knows how realistic the battles in this game feel. Photorealistic graphics were essential for this game to convey the dramatic vision and the desperation of the First World War through the eyes of a soldier. The developers from DICE themselves said that their goal was to make the most realistic and exciting version of an alternative World War I. And the Frostbite engine has coped with this task perfectly. And in general, Frostbite, in my memory, is one of the best engines aimed at realistic visuals. Although such a powerful engine with bad developers can also turn a project into some kind of crap. Long ago, DICE proved that when graphics are backed by a creative vision, photorealism can enhance the gaming experience. But the question is, do all games need to chase ultra realism? Some of the most immersive games I've ever played use cartoon or some other stylized graphics. Just think of The Legend of Zelda or the recent Sifu. Yes, of course, there are a lot of cool photorealistic games, but if all games start looking photorealistic, won't they become too similar to each other, losing their uniqueness? Many older games stand out because of their unique visual styles and sense of propulsion. For example, From Software games. They have an extremely clear and unique combat system that benefits greatly from an engine that emphasizes artistic style over graphical detail. No Souls-style game on Unreal Engine feels even half as good as the From Software's combat system. And I think a big part of the problem is that there's some kind of innate clunkiness in the Unreal Engine code itself that prevents games like this from feeling smooth. If you've played a recent Stalker game, you'll know what I mean. Yes, the game looks great, and you can even turn a blind eye to the poor optimization, but even if you buy the best hardware and play with a good and stable FPS, the game still feels somehow jittery at the gameplay level. And it's not just a problem with Stalker. Let's take the recent Delta Force, Remnant 2, or RoboCop. Yes, these games are not bad. RoboCop was a pleasant surprise for me, as it captured the vibe of old school movies quite accurately. But all of these games have in common what almost every game on the Unreal Engine has in common: For some reason, the gameplay on this engine doesn't feel smooth. It's just kind of clunky. I don't know. Clumsy and slow, although the FPS can be quite good. Perhaps that's why From Software fans often can't play other Souls titles. None of them feel as smooth and thoughtful. I'm not a developer, but I think that many people would agree with me that most Unreal Engine games have this clunky feel to them. FPS games on Unreal often, though not always, have the same feeling. Think of the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Even after 17 years, this shooter still feels smoother than most modern shooters made on Unreal. To compensate for the lack of enjoyable gameplay, or new innovative mechanics, or even just an interesting visual style, developers simply use the technical progress of this engine to make cool graphics. But I want to ask you a question. Have graphics really improved that much in the past 10 years? If you look at games released 10 years ago, you'll notice that many of them can be easily confused with modern releases. There are many examples of this. Like, I can't even read a fucking easy sentence. You seen this shit? Holy shit. Oh no. I'm so sorry. My camera decided to fucking die on me. As I was saying, there are many examples of this. And the average consumer has a logical question. Is it worth spending additional years of development to increase the number of polygons in each texture by 10 times if the games already looked good 10 years ago? And then another year to optimize these many polygons when often it's not even possible to optimize them at all. Who is this really for? Right now, we are witnessing how the Unreal Engine was supposed to become the standard of the future. But in fact, unbeknownst to everyone, it is creating a diversity crisis in the gaming industry and is literally killing games. Sorry, editors. It's gonna be a tough one.